to, oh, I have to hit my little button real quick here. Hold on. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And if you don't want to be recorded, that's okay. Just turn your camera off. So our mission is to empower, promote, and celebrate women's creative work. And if you're interested in joining, you can click on become a member inside of the chat box. So just go down to the chat, check it out. And on behalf of Women in Film San Francisco Board of Directors, Diane Walsh, Carol Hall, Neil Ernindram, Kelly White, Nicole Carson, and Amy Zinn, and myself. We just really want to say thank you for coming out tonight and spending your evening with us. And we really appreciate you. So I'm now going to turn things over to our co-producer of tonight, Nicole Carson. And thank you so much for putting this all together, Diane and Nicole.
Thank you. It's great to see so many of you here tonight for this special event. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping Zoom mechanics. If at any time during this evening you have a question, please type it into the chat. If you want to save the chat at the very end, you can do so by clicking on the 3 dots at the top of the chat screen and then click on Save Chat. Also, to avoid sound issues, please mute your audio now. When you want to share something during the Q&A, you can unmute. We'd also like to encourage you to go to the top right of your screen, click on View, and select Speaker for the best visual experience during the event. And that's it for housekeeping. I'd also like to say thank you to our community partners for this event. I'm pulling up the slide right now. I'd like to thank the Alliance of Women Directors. Sorry, letting someone in. The Alliance of Women Directors, the Jewish Film Institute, Women in Film Cincinnati, the Center for Asian American Media, San Francisco Film Commission, also known as FilmSF, Philadelphia Women in Film and Television, Bravemaker, and Women in Film Seattle. These partnerships are vital to our outreach and expansion. We thank them for their generosity and support of Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area and of this event. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce Diane Walsh, our Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area Board Vice President and my co-producing partner for this evening, for this event, who will introduce our program and the panel.
Well, thanks, Nicole, and a big welcome to everyone tonight. Thanks so much for being here and for your interest in the art of horror filmmaking. We're absolutely thrilled to host this talented panel of women creatives who direct, produce, write, sometimes act in their own films, of their own making, of each other's films, and of other producing entities who they share their talent with. They also happen to be good friends, which is really nice and is going to make for a great conversation tonight. Jenn Wexler, Emily Bennett, and Ashleigh Snead each chose to tell their stories via film in the thrilling and scary and bloody and bone-chilling world of horror. And we're excited to have them here to share some of the lessons they've learned in making that choice of career path. I've known Jenn Wexler for almost 20 years now, and it was my good fortune to cross creative pathways with her when she attended the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, and I was teaching some writing courses. We've kept in touch through the years, and as she's built this exciting career of hers. So when the WISP aboard, we sat around and we're talking about events, and one of the events that someone said was, how about a horror, something to do with horror? I thought of her immediately, spoke with her, and she would graciously agree to help make it happen and brought 2 of her creative friends with her. So let me introduce you now to the moderator of our panel this evening, Jenn Wexler. A big welcome to the Bay Area, Jenn.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here, even over Zoom.
Well, I'm proud to say that our many cities by the Bay here celebrate the horror genre year-round with various festivals. There's Terror in the Bay, another Hole in the Head Film Festival, BCM Horror Film Fest Evil in Berkeley, and smaller events like the Blood and Popcorn Film Festival that just happened. So there's been a lot of local excitement about you, Ashleigh and Emily, joining us tonight. So I thought I'd just get things started by telling people who don't know already a little bit about you. So don't be embarrassed. Don't just talk for a little bit. Jenn's a writer and a director whose directorial debut, The Ranger, world premiered at South by Southwest, screened at the Museum of Modern Art, and was released by AMC's Shudder. Her latest film, The Sacrifice Game, world premiered at the Fantasia International Film Festival, had its international premiere at Fright Fest UK, its US premiere at Fantastic Fest, and is now also on Shudder and AMC's Plus. She's worked in TV as well, directing CW's Pandora and True TV's Late Night Snack, and has produced several award-winning genre films, of which Most Beautiful Island won the Grand Jury Prize for Best Narrative Feature at South by Southwest. Quite impressive, Jenn. Good work.
Thank you.
I think it's a perfect time now for me to just stop talking, hand things over to you so the panel discussion and Q&A can get started. Everybody's waiting for it, so it's all yours.
Great. I just want to say that Diane was my favorite professor at the University of the Arts, where I attended a while ago. So I would love to bring on Emily Bennett to start. Welcome, Emily. And I'm going to give a little bit of your bio to everybody. Emily is an Academy-recognized screenwriter, Fangoria Chainsaw Award-winning filmmaker, and a rising force in genre cinema. Her films have screened at festivals such as Sundance, Sitges, Fantastic Fest, BFAN, and Fantasia. Her debut feature, Alone with You, was produced by actor Theo James and producer Andrew Corkin, who also produced Marcy May Marlene. Her second feature, Bloodshine, has played festivals such as Fright Fest and Sitges so far in 2025. And as an actress, Bennett appears in the upcoming, as in like this Friday, wide release of Neon's horror film SHELBY OAKS, as well as the new film adaptation of The Mortuary Assistant. Welcome, Emily. Thanks for
Hi.
being here.
Thank you so much. It's so odd to hear a bio.
And now I'd like to invite Ashleigh Snead to join us. And Ashleigh, I'm now going to read your bio. Ashleigh is an Independent Spirit Award nominated producer. Her films include Neon's SHELBY OAKS, which is, by the way, executive produced by Mike Flanagan, The Artifice Girl, The Ranger, which was my film, and Netflix's The Block Island Sound. Currently on the festival circuit, Emily's film Bloodshine, as well as Where Darkness Dwells, starring Katie Parker. Upcoming films include Joe Swanberg's new movie starring Dakota Fanning and Jake Johnson, a new horror movie from director Adam Egypt Mortimer, and Stephen DeGennaro's Remote. She holds an MBA in film producing and entrepreneurship from NYU and is a member of the DGA. And she recently co-launched the Alaska Filmmaking Initiative to work with legislators in reintroducing a film incentive to the state, which she moved to from New York. So yeah, now if you want to make a movie in Alaska, talk to Ashleigh. She knows all about it, everything you have to do. So I just want to say, before we dive into this discussion, the three of us, as Diane kind of mentioned, we're all good friends. We've all worked together in various capacities. And when Diane asked who I wanted to bring on, I thought of these ladies because they're doing awesome work. So just to start, I want to hear, because everybody's path to filmmaking is so different. How did each of you get started in the industry in general? And how did you ultimately make your way to Emily directing and Ashleigh producing?
Awesome.
Emily, I'm just gonna choose you. You go first.
Great. Perfect. So how did I get started in the industry? I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in the Bible Belt. So I was very cloistered. I wasn't allowed to watch horror films growing up. So there was a deep need to see them growing up. But when you grow up in a kind of very structured household, a very religious household, I needed to find creative outlets. So I found theater. I started doing school plays and had my dad's camcorder and never put together that I could actually direct things, even though that's all I did growing up. I went into acting because I thought that's what women were kind of allowed to do. And so I went to a boarding school for acting, the South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities. It was free if you got in. So it sounds fancy, but it was actually like the cheapest thing. And I got to act all the time. And then I sold my car. I wanted to go to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. They accept one American a year. And for some reason, I thought I could get in, and I was right. And I got into RADA. I trained a year under Tom Hiddleston and Andrea Riseborough. Bunch more famous people. Alan Rickman was a mentor of mine. And so I loved Shakespeare. I'm a classics nerd. So I got really into that, moved to New York, and just got battered by the industry. No one cared that I went to RADA. I knew how to act for the stage, but not for film. And so I had to kind of relearn everything. And after auditioning for some pretty questionable projects and reading dialogue I couldn't really get behind, I was like, well, maybe I should try this. And I started making short films, and all of those short films turned out to be horror, my initial love from childhood. Um, so that's kind of how that was my entry point into the industry. And I will say, Jenn Wexler herself is my gateway drug into the horror community. She took me to Fantasia Film Festival in 2019 and changed my life forever. That is my current network and all of my best friends. So thank you, Jenn.
I will say, just to like, because later on we're going to be talking about networking and stuff. And I do remember very clearly, Emily and I went and got coffee, and Emily was like, how do I get involved in making horror movies? And I was like, well, next week I'm going to this amazing film festival in Montreal where, like, if you go, you'll meet a ton of people really fast and get a ton of connections and start these relationships to, put you on the path to making these movies. And this was like mine and Emily's first time ever getting coffee together. And I was like, you can come and like stay in my hotel room if you want. And then she did. And look at us now. We're talking over Zoom together. But anyway, let's move the focus to Ashleigh. Ashleigh, how did you get started in the industry? And then how did you make your way to producing?
Well, similar to Emily, I started as actually an actor like in high school. And I love, actually before that, I started when I was like 7 or 8 doing like community theater stuff, but I was never good at it. I was like never good. I was like the tree or the extra or like dancing in the background. Like I was never good, but I loved it. And I did all the theater stuff. I like did all the musicals, and I couldn't sing or dance. I'd always sing like Happy Birthday as my audition song, which was like the joke. Like the director of our high school like always knew I was never going to have like a lead part, but I had to always audition. But I just loved the community of it. I loved the spirit of it. I loved, I was like big into reading, and I loved stories, and I loved it all. So I came up kind of through that and didn't have any idea what like produce. I was from Pittsburgh. I didn't really know like anything besides acting or directing really. And I knew I loved it, but that wasn't going to be my path. So I went to college and I thought, oh, maybe I'll try directing. I was like, maybe I want to be on like the business side of film, like whatever that means. And so I actually double majored my first semester in directing and business, because I was at Penn State. There was, not like whatever, that program was fine. But, and I very quickly was like, I am not a director either. Like these people have been studying cameras forever. They know all these details that I don't know. So I really focused kind of on business and entrepreneurship and just trying to maybe go into like a creative industry. And after I graduated college, I moved to New York. I started working in PR and marketing and just learning about business. And I started my own company in the fashion side, in the fashion world. So I was sort of always in this like creative arts side, but really focused on business and creating things and doing what I thought I did best, which was getting everybody into a room and like giving them the things that they need to be creative and like make whatever we're trying to make. And while I was running that business, it ended up being kind of successful, and I had a lot of freedom to be able to start making short films and music videos. So that's what I started doing. I started producing, just kind of like felt I was like with, creative friends, and we were like, let's make a movie. And I just kind of naturally fell into the role of the person who was like organizing it all. Like I liked the paperwork. I liked the budget. I liked all the stuff that nobody else really wanted to do, you know? And I made a few shorts, and then eventually made a short that, you know, didn't really do much, but just sort of learned how to make short films. And then I made a short that went to kind of like launched me on the festival circuit, and it went to Comic-Con, and it went to Dragon Con, and it was this like post-apocalyptic Western short. And I was like, I love this like genre community. You know, it wasn't a horror, but it was like a genre. And I just love the fans at Comic-Con. And I was like, this is great. And this is what I want to be doing. And I basically just sort of followed that path. And eventually, you know, Jenn's movie, The Ranger, was probably basically the first feature that I produced fully from start to finish. And some of our producing partners I knew from New York and said, hey, do you want to jump in here? I think you could be, you know, helpful in this process. And I'm a very big believer in like, say yes and figure it out later. You know, that's kind of that's why I started a business when I was 23. And that's how I kind of got into producing. Like, I had never made a feature, but I said, okay, let's do it. And just kind of applied a lot of things that I had learned from starting a business to that set. And learned a ton. You know, I was learning the whole time. And I'm still learning. Every movie I make, I like learn something new. And yeah, but I definitely approach it from the sort of like the business entrepreneurial, like that side of it. I'm not a writer. I'm not a director. I love story. I love reading. But I love like finding projects and finding creative people and then figuring out how to support them in getting their thing made. Like, that's what I think is my main sort of skill set. So,
just to say, like, Ashleigh was like, I didn't even realize that The Ranger was your first feature, because you were so on top of everything, and like it felt so like supported and held, and like everything was organized and worked out. So good to know. Like, I'm learning that right now. And then I also just want to say, we're about to move into horror, how you guys got involved in horror. I mentioned it in each of their bios, but I want to reiterate, their movie is coming out on Friday, Shelby Oaks. It's getting a wide release by Neon. It's going to be a huge horror movie. We're all indie filmmakers, so this is the dream that you make. And Ashleigh, you can speak more to this as we get through, you know, as we talk more, but the dream is that you make, and I don't know how big or small it was, but that you make an indie film and then it gets picked up by a big distributor and you get this wide release. So like, props to you. Emily's in it. Ashleigh produced it. Props to you guys, and everybody has to go watch it on Friday. But why don't we talk about that right now? So horror, how did you decide you wanted to make make horror your primary genre? I know, Ashleigh, you're making Joe Swanberg's romantic drama right now, but like, you've made mostly horror movies. How did you decide like horror was your genre?
so I think basically when I started, so starting with like The Ranger and a couple other movies sort of in that same time frame that were, you know, you're starting by raising like, the way we started was like raising like private equity from individual people. And so you're really trying to, I mean, you always are trying, but it's really important to make people's money back. Like, that's the business side of me. I'm like, I want to try to, if I'm taking money from people, I want to try to give it back to them. And it just felt like, you know, the genre, you know, the horror world and genre and everything was, you know, from a, again, business side, it's one of the sort of best places to be from that perspective. Also, it's the most fun place to be creatively. Like, there's a real community around it. Like, we were talking, you know, Jenn was saying how she took Emily to Fantasia. Like, there are just whole festivals that are dedicated to horror or genre films. And I fell into that, you know, with the sort of, I've always loved that stuff. Like, I love genre stuff in general. And so when I started making those short films, I loved like being, like I said, at Dragon Con and Comic-Con, and just like seeing that audience. And I knew for making features that was the type of people that I wanted to make movies for. It was also the type of people I wanted to make movies with. Like, I love, and it's also the type of set I want to be on, because making Joe's drama was super, super fun. I love Joe. I'll make more movies with him, but you're just like, every day you're arriving to set and you're like, not that there's nothing to do, but you're kind of like, okay, we're in a room and we're talking and this is great. But I come from like making 19 other films where I arrive on set and it's like, who are we blowing up today? Who's falling from a tower? Are there dogs coming? Where's the blood? Like, we have fog machines everywhere. Like, it's such a dynamic, for me as a producer, it's such a dynamic, like, on-set experience that then when you go and make like a drama, it's like not easy, but sort of, you know what I mean? Like, like it's really fun to make genre stuff. And, you know, Jenn or Emily will, as the directors of their movie, they're like, you know, today, yeah, we're cutting people open. Like, we're doing whatever wild stuff is happening. And that's so fun day to day. So it's kind of like a you know, from the business perspective, it's a really good thing to be in. Creatively, I think horror is something that people really want to watch. It's having it's always been popular. It's having such a moment right now. I think it's such a great vehicle to tell really engaging, meaningful stories, kind of masked under entertainment. And the people are super fun, and the sets are super fun to be on. So that's why I keep doing it again and again and again. So.
And Emily, what about horror made it like your primary genre that you wanted to work in?
I think initially it's because I wasn't allowed to watch them when I was a kid. I think that's where the initial forbidden idea came in. My grandmother would let me, and we would rent VHS from the back of like an appliance store, and I always picked the scariest cover I could. So watching Hellraiser, watching Arachnophobia, watching like just classics when I was like so young. I couldn't believe how scared I was, but I couldn't believe how cool and exciting that was because life felt so boring and odd and uncanny. But these films gave me such an outlet and a perspective and a feeling that I didn't understand. And so that's just so enticing to me and seductive. And when I started moving into acting, of course, I studied Stanislavski, Strasberg, Uta Hagen, Stella Adler, Meisner, blah, blah, blah. And going to RADA, you get very like stuck in classics. And so I was just like, oh no, horror, no, I can't do that anymore. Like I need to watch Elia Kazan movies and On the Waterfront and Vivian Leigh and Anthony Hopkins. And I moved away from it partially just because I felt wrong for liking it. I was like, oh, okay, that's childish things. Like maybe I leave that behind. But all the Shakespeare plays I loved were Macbeth, were Titus Andronicus, the bloodiest, craziest Jacobean plays. The theater of the Grand Guignol in France of just blood pouring everywhere. And I was always like really interested in that. And so when I started directing my own short films, the first two shorts that I directed were more thriller, very inspired by Hitchcock, and but always very dark. And the third short film that I made called Lovers, LVRS, I made after the worst breakup in my entire life. It destroyed my life. And I went to sleep that night and had a dream. And the dream was so surreal and horrific. I just funded the film and I was like, I have to tell this story. Later, when I met Jenn Wexler, I showed her the film. I didn't know it was horror, but terrible things happen. Like limbs.
It's a scary movie.
It's very scary. Like emotionally, it was scary for me. And I didn't know to call it horror. I had no horror friends. I didn't feel cool. I was just getting back into like rewatching everything and being like, why did I ever leave this world? But Jenn, you're the first one who was like, no, this is a horror film. And I was like, really? Okay. But it was the only way I could embody what it felt like, what the horror emotionally in my life felt like. It felt the most cathartic as an actor, as a director. Allegory and metaphor just converge in these very visceral sequences. I'm a huge fan of body horror and using the body as a metaphor for emotional pain as well. And Jenn, you were just like, this is a horror film. Like you need to submit this to horror festivals. And I did, and it played Sitges, which is the biggest horror festival in Europe. And it changed my life. And what Ashleigh said too, the community is really what made me stay, because I've never been, I've always been a bit of an outsider, a literal redheaded stepchild. And when I found the horror community, I felt so welcome. And I didn't have to look super cool. I'm not that cool. I don't have any tattoos.
Very cool.
Well, thanks. But I just found my people, honestly. And it's, yeah, we're like the island of misfit toys together. And it's just such bloody fun to tell these stories. The community is really supportive, especially women in the horror community. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, yeah, what's great about horror is that there's so many subgenres you can work in that
Yeah.
your movie could be a drama, but it has horror elements, and it's actually, Hereditary. Ari Aster would joke that his movie wasn't a horror movie, it was a family drama. But it's obviously still falls under horror. Anyway, it's really fun to play with um stories that are like what we think of as horror, but are like a different genre, it's separate from what we think of as horror, so like horror adjacent, and then you play with that. So let's say you want to make a romantic drama but you want to give it a horror edge, like it could still fall under the umbrella of horror. And yeah, I agree, the community is amazing, and we'll talk more about that soon. um, let's talk about first features and how each of you got your first feature off the ground, because that's always the hardest thing. You've made a bunch of shorts, and now you want to share those shorts, and you want to find somebody who will believe in you and finance your first feature. And you want to make that leap. So, Emily, why don't you talk about your experience making Alone with You? And also just like describe what it is a little bit for everybody.
Sure. So Alone with You was born. I was initially going into production on a totally different film, with producers, and actor Theo James and producer Andrew Corkin. They have a production company called Untapped. My now husband and I became in touch with them. We co-wrote a screenplay that Andrew and Theo really liked. So we were moving quickly forward with that, moving into possible like pre-production. We were talking to cast. And this was at the start of 2020, of course. So we all know what happened in March. And so when the world shut down, Andrew and Theo were still very excited about us creatively, but since the world shut down and SAG wasn't even allowing uh, films to shoot, SAG actors to shoot in anything until guidelines were in place, um, Theo and Andrew, they were like, well, we'll pick up where we left off. And immediately, I had just moved in with my then boyfriend. My now husband is a cinematographer, so he owns mountains of gear. He is a brilliant cinematographer. He is a ex-punk rocker. He is used to doing everything DIY. I am super used to doing DIY black box theater. Like I've built sets, I've done everything. And so with our powers combined, we took a pitch to Theo and Andrew, and we were like, look, what if we do a horror film set inside an apartment like Repulsion, a single location, using our apartment, no crew. People think we're lying. We had no crew on this film, but we wanted to shoot it like an actual film, not found footage. I would play the lead because I'm an actor. I designed the set. It was where we lived. It was a two-story apartment deep in Brooklyn that Justin had lived in forever. And we made this house, like this apartment, our haunted house, literally. We blacked out the windows, and it's about my character, Charlie, during waiting for her girlfriend to come home to celebrate their anniversary. She doesn't come home. Odd phone calls happen. She suddenly can't open the door, and Charlie begins to descend in a kind of madness that you don't really know the truth of until the end. And so it was a very contained story. It took us forever to shoot. I cleared the SAG contracts. We hired Barbara Crampton to play my mother. And everybody shot remotely. We sent her a camera, a microphone. I rehearsed with her. I was only able to act with green screen. And so we basically had to get her coverage. I basically memorized her performance and with an earbud in my ear while Justin is doing beautiful camera work. Somehow this magic came together. After creating literally the smallest feature film possible with no crew, we were hanging the boom mic from the ceiling. The ceiling looked like Swiss cheese. Again, it took forever to film this. We world premiered at Fantastic Fest, which is one of the biggest horror film festivals in the world, and we received worldwide distro prior to our premiere. So we, basically the moral of the story is find people who believe in you and take opportunities when they're there. You don't need, the other film had a bigger cast. I was not going to be in it, but we looked at circumstances. We were like, you got a ton of gear. I know I'm going to show up and know my lines. Let's tailor this to exactly what we can do that is still compelling and horrifying and kind of seizes an evergreen feeling, not just a COVID feeling, but an evergreen feeling of isolation, alienation, panic, and horror. And so that's how we did it. I don't know that this film could or would have been made in any other circumstance, but in a fever dream, it happened. So
Yeah, and it's on Shudder, right?
it was on Shudder. I think it's on everything now. I think it's on Tubi. So honestly, like, feel free to watch it on Tubi, alone with you.
Yeah, well, you guys should check it out. It's a really good example of like working with what you have, but it feels bigger than, as Emily said, a COVID movie, even though those were the circumstances under which you made it.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah, Shudder did acquire it initially, and I think that was in 2021. So I think the contract it may end up back there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like to me it's like the character, you could really capture the emotion well. And emotion is everything, character is everything. And that's ultimately what pulls a viewer in. And it's just a really good if you want to make a movie and you don't have very much money, it's a really good movie to look to for like a quality film with elements that you had access to at that time. Ashley, let's talk about your first feature. Was it The Ranger?
Well, the first one I produced was The Ranger. The first like movie set I was on was right before that, a film called Camera Obscura, where a producing partner of ours on The Ranger, I was actually a production manager on that one. So and that was like $1 million-something movie for Universal. And basically I got a phone call that was like, hey, do you want to come and production manage this with me? And that's when I really faked it to me. I was like, sure. And I was like, what's a production manager? Like legit. I mean, but I was like, I can run a business. Like, I don't know. I was like, I think I can do this. Let's do it. And it worked out great. So that was the first like set I kind of managed. And then the first one I produced was The Ranger. Yeah.
And should we talk a little bit about how we got The Ranger off the ground? You can
got The Ranger going.
share. Yeah, got The Ranger going from idea to us being in upstate New York making a movie
Yeah.
in the best
Yeah.
Western.
So it may have probably had a little bit of a history with Jenn, which was her history before I got involved. But I got involved when Jenn took it to a pitch kind of competition, I guess, basically up at Fantasia, which is the festival that she and Emily went to. And every year they have this thing called Frontiers, and they do an amazing thing, which is they have people come in and pitch their projects to a group of industry professionals. And Jenn had put together like a trailer, probably a pitch deck, different things, and came up and just talked about this film that she wanted to make. And it caught the eye of me and our producing partners on it, as someone who, when I saw that trailer, it was basically like, I think she has a really great vision. You could tell from that that she had a great vision for what she wanted to do. It was like an excellent proof of concept. And I knew with her background, having worked with like Glass Eye as a producer and just like having a lot of experience, I just really believed that she was going to be able to pull this off. So the script, I mean, I like cruised through the script really fast. And I feel within like a matter of days, we were kind of like saying we're going to make this movie together. Like it was pretty fast from my perspective. You may have been kind of pitching around for a little while, but as soon as I saw it, I sort of believed right away. And that's happened several times in my sort of producing career where I just am like, oh, I think this person, like, they know what they're doing. They have a vision and they can definitely pull this off. And I felt like that was Jenn. And she was 100% that. Like on set, she would always, just had a very clear idea of what she was doing. And I love that. So basically we said, yes, let's make it together. We met a few times in New York. We had kind of got like a little producing team together. She had a lot of people that she'd worked with on previous films, which is really key, like to community. Like when you're making your first feature, like just like call everyone you've worked with, like call them to come make this movie with you, which is what Jenn, she's like, I have all these friends I've made different movies with, and they're all going to come out for me for this movie. And it was just such a great experience because of that, because it was people who wanted to work together. And we went upstate to a tiny little town, upstate New York, and lived in this little hotel room. Back then we all shared. I mean, we had like 3 people in a room. I don't know. We were really just trying to put as much money on the screen that we could. And everyone was on board. Like our actors were all on board to just make this kind of movie. Our crew was amazing. Jenn was a great leader. And we went into the woods and we came back out and we had the Ranger. And it was awesome. And then we took it to South by and we sold it to Shudder back when Shudder was like relatively new-ish, like, or really coming onto the scene, like 2019, I guess it's probably when we sold it ish. 2018. Yeah. So yeah, it was just a awesome experience.
And in terms of us, like, in terms of the financing, not to get too deep into it, but just to express, it was a small movie, and it was the type of movie where we cobbled together pieces from a lot of different people. And, that's how we put it together.
Yeah, it was all equity. It was all equity financing. And it was from like circles of people who believed in either Jenn or one of the producers or, somebody that was involved in the project. It was starting out with just kind of like tapping a network or an extended network. We did have a few, like we had a small company come in on it as well, that was just getting started. But yeah, it was really just tapping into things. And you were also using your resources. Emily, I love what you said about like creating. I think a lot of creativity can come from being like, what do I have access to? And Jenn had access to this amazing, Jeremy Holm, who plays the Ranger, he was a friend of your co-writers and everything like that. So you're like, I know a person who can be in this. We shot on Larry Feston's property for some of the movie. Like, I feel like you're like, I have this great crew. I have this great DP. Like you definitely put things into place that you knew you could like pull off, when deciding to make that story.
Well, I do think that that's a good tip in general. If you are looking to make your first feature, like what do you have access to? Who are people that you admire, who you've worked with before, or you want to work with, and you have like a friendship with? And what can you, as Emily did on her film for The Ranger, it was like, well, we're going to have 6 characters in the woods. How much could that cost? That was my thinking in terms of that. But it's like, what do you have access to? And then, you start building. Don't wait for other people to like give you permission. Just start building your movie. So when you have those conversations, you can be like, yeah, and this is the DP I want to work with on this. You can show them they've worked on this and this, and you can share the reel, or like, yeah, this is the location we have in mind for like our main location. Like, you create your lookbook, and you just have all the stuff you've started collecting there. So it feels to other people, it feels to financiers or to collaborators you want to join, that it's a moving train. It's not that like it's just a dream and you're going to figure it all out together. It's like, no, you as the filmmaker are already making plans, and they can be part of the plans and it's going to be awesome, or they can, see you at the premiere.
I think that's a huge, huge tip, is like any movie I've ever gotten off the ground has basically gotten off because we just like decide sort of like just start saying that it's going to be made. Like, don't live in a world where you're making this movie in 5 years, and maybe there is, if you have like some $20 million project that you can't make right now, that's fine. But find a project that you can make and start just like put yourself on a deadline. Be like, I'm making this next summer. What do I need to start doing? And like, maybe it will come together. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer, but if you just start pushing and assembling, like Jen's saying, like find your DP, find your producers, start just telling people you're making this movie and start thinking that you're making this movie. And obviously things happen and it's not always that easy, but it is the only way that if it is going to happen, that it will happen. You really have to operate in this world where you're like just pushing it forward. And you as the filmmaker, I mean, ultimately, like it really comes to the sort of key people that start with the project that are pushing that boulder up the hill. Like, don't wait for other people to like green light your movie because it like will not happen, Yeah, I think Mike Flanagan, who I just worked with for Shelby Oaks, is a great example of that, where he really just like made these small movies when he started with his friends in places he had like, a bridge or whatever. And he would like write that location into a script and say, I know I can go here. I know I can go to this farmhouse, like whatever. And he would just sort of made a few movies in a row that were small and with things that he had, and then just like kind of kept going, I think there's so much creativity that can happen when you're playing in a sandbox, instead of just being like, I can make a movie, whatever movie I want to make for whatever budget. Like, in some ways it's way more creative to be like, I have these pieces and how do I put them together into a cool, compelling story? I think so much cool art comes from like constraints and being like put into this have a little bit of like limitations, and you're like, how do I make this cool?
So let's say that you have that mindset and you've been slowly collecting ideas. Let's say you have your script, you have the person you want to shoot it, you have some cast ideas. Like, how do you, when you are a filmmaker wanting to make your first feature, how do you decide what the budget should be? If you go to a party and you meet a producer and they ask, well, what's the budget? Like, how do you even know what the response should be? How do you know when you should solidify, those cast ideas and actually ask an actor, do you want to be involved in this? How do you take all of this? Let's say you have your lookbook, and for anybody who doesn't know, a lookbook is a document that you create with your script, and it's like a snazzy deck that expresses the vibe and tone of the movie visually. Once you have all that, like, what do you do if you want to get money? Ashleigh, you start.
Okay. I mean, obviously money is like probably, the hardest thing about making movies is getting the financing for your movies, right? That's like the roadblock that everybody faces at any level, whatever size movie you're making. If you're making $100 million movie, it's still hard to get $100 million again. If you're making a $200,000 movie, it's hard to keep doing that. But, like in terms of what the budget should be, I think that the budget should be, in this market and climate and in the horror, space, you should make your movie for as little money as you can while still getting all of the creative and everything that you need to make the movie great. So you want to be like very economical with what you need, but not all movies. I do like some mentorship and stuff, and I run into a lot of people who will come and they'll be like, I need $5 million for my movie. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, because that's what a movie costs to make. Well, that's not true. Like, you can go online and you can see all these movies that were made for $5 million, but some movies need that and some movies don't, So I think to decide what your budget is, you do have to, if you don't know how to budget, then find like a line producer or a friend or someone even in business or something that knows how to do a bit of a budget, and start to just kind of like put a rough budget into place and see like what you can make it for, and make it for as little as you can without sacrificing it. The worst thing you can do is to try to stuff a big movie into too small of a budget. Like that, don't do that. Like, don't give your movie less money than it needs. That's not a good idea. But just figure out like what that, I usually make like 3 budgets sort of, which is like, here's what we need like bare minimum to make this movie good. Here's like a comfortable level, and here's like a really great level. You know, like I kind of think about it in 3 ways, because most movies can be made at sort of many different levels, but those 3 are kind of like really good to think about. And so when you're like, that's the first step. You do need to know how much money you need, but it's a little hard to figure out, I guess, is my answer. I don't know. But be economical. and not, you don't need like $10 million for your movie most of the time. You know, like you can do a lot with a little. There's great examples of it all over the place.
So let's say that let's say you don't know anything about that part of putting a movie together. Let's say you know everything about creative, you have a really strong script, you've made strong shorts, but you don't know budget. You want to attract a producer. How do you meet a producer? And Emily, like, how have you gone out and networked and met people? You met a ton of people really fast, but I might have introduced you to a festival, but you met all these people and maintained and built those relationships. Like, what is your approach for meeting people in the industry and retaining those and building those relationships?
I don't think of it as quote unquote networking, because the idea of like networking like sets my teeth on edge. I just try to meet people. I like having actual conversations and listening to, if they're a producer, I like listening to the projects that they want to make. Because if they like making like big sci-fi franchise films, that's probably like not going to be a collaboration for the both of us, because you know, I don't make those films right now, at least, or like a comedy, like a straight up comedy. Like I'm probably not the director for them. So I think listening, I collect actual business cards if people have them. Or I do like little QR codes, like I have a dot card so they can like scan my stuff. But I share contact information. And after the festival, after everyone's had time to like rest, because everyone needs to rest after a big festival, I follow up. And that's something a lot of people don't do. They have a lot of conversations and they have a lot of, you know, drinks, possibly like going out, and, you know, if they're meeting at pitch markets and things like that, you'll have all of these conversations, but then it kind of fades away unless you're keeping notes, keeping cards, and keeping track of who could be a good actionable person to possibly work with. Um, you know, I kind of top line the people who I feel like would vibe well with my work. I try not to pitch at people, especially when I'm first meeting them. I think that's a huge turnoff. I'm also a producer, so I know it's kind of reading the room, and again, it's just having a conversation with a person. And honestly, having conversations about things other than film, because you can find that you have similar, like I just got certified to scuba dive. And so like if I'm talking to somebody about that, that's super cool. If they're into it, I actually happen to have written a horror film about scuba diving. So if someone's super into like talking to me about scuba diving, I'm like, you know, it's so funny we're talking about this. And like, you know, you find ways to segue. I just try to make sure I'm never pushing myself on people. And the best and longest term relationships I have in the industry, especially with producers, are organic and seem to be mutually beneficial. I'm not tricking somebody by coming on board one of my films. I know my films are going to be good and successful, whether it's like in the indie realm or hopefully to break through at some point. I know that it's going to be mutually beneficial. I think it's important to always know you're looking for partners. You're, you know, as Mark Duplass said, the cavalry's not coming. No one's going to save you. No one's going to greenlight your film but you. And so find the story you need to tell and really trust your gut with who is going to help you tell it.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Ashleigh, when you're, you know, when you're, well, 2 questions. We'll start with this one. How do you decide what film you want to get behind and support?
Well, basically when I'm meeting, I really love everything what Emily was saying. Like if you are meeting producers or filmmakers, I meet a lot of people in person at festivals or through friends. And I love supporting, I actually really love working with first time feature filmmakers. And not everybody does, but I do. I mean, I feel like Emily, I guess your second time when I worked with you. Jenn,
Yeah.
first time. Like I have Chris Stuckman for Shelby Oaks, first time feature. Like I actually have like a big track record, if you look, like of all these first time feature filmmakers, and I love it. I get really excited when I meet someone and they're really excited about their project. Like I think I respond a lot to passion. I respond a ton to passion. I respond to who the human is that's telling the story. What is the story? I'm looking at that. And then again, like I said with Jenn, when I saw her pitch, I'm thinking about like, do I think that this person or this team that they've put together already, like can do what they're saying they're going to do? You know what I mean? So if someone comes and says, I can make this movie for $200,000, that's all I need. It's like, can you? Like, like I like am evaluating, can they? Or I'm going to make it for 5 million. It's like, can you make this movie? What's it going to be like? Do I believe you can pull this off? And that's sort of like through conversation, through seeing their previous work. If they have it, even in, most people, even if it's their first short or first feature, they've done a series of shorts and things like that. So it's like reading and looking at their previous work. And I'm just really, I'm really responding to ultimately the story. That's the most important piece, is the story and the film that you're going to tell. But as important is like who the director is or who the team is and who's going to be making it is very important to me. And I kind of evaluate both things at the same time, because there might be a really great script or project with someone who can't, either I'm not going to be like the person that should be working with them, or I don't know that they can actually pull it off, or, they're going to go like way over, but like, everything's going to be like a mess, And I feel like I kind of am looking for those sort of indicators when I'm chatting with someone and kind of doing due diligence on the project. But really it's it starts with story. It starts with, do I see an audience for this? I'm definitely approaching it from like, who's going to watch this? Where do I see it? What are the distributors that I think when I read a script, often you can be like, oh, I think this is who it would go to. This is the type of audience that would like it. These are the festivals I see it playing at. Like I'm sort of looking at all of that as like a global evaluation, I guess. But I also get really sold on people. Like I said, the passion and just really wanting to help people tell their story is really important to me too.
So on that note, I want to ask now about the Shelby Oaks story, as much as you can tell us how, how you guys both got involved with it and how it went from indie film to wide release.
Yeah, so Shelby Oaks was actually, again, if you're able to go to these film festivals or any of these, and by the way, when I say, we're talking a lot about like Fantasia or Sitges or these big festivals, regional festivals, whatever is in your, you guys, San Francisco, like any regional festivals also have tons of value to go to, because every festival you go to, big or small, always has good filmmakers and people that are interesting to meet. Everyone's interesting to meet. So go meet people and be a friend, like Emily said. Like, don't just be asking people for things, be a reciprocal partner in the relationship, so if they're looking for something, help them find it, and that will make them help you find things. But anyway, so Shelby was at Fantastic Fest. Chris Stuckman was there. My producing partner, Aaron Kuntz, and him were hanging out. I think at the sort of, there's this tradition of having these battles on one of the nights where they have these debates. And they were hanging out, and he just started talking about, he was an online YouTube personality that reviewed films, and he started talking about how he's always wanted to make his own feature. And I guess he talked about it in many of his videos. He had quite a following. And he started just basically, soft pitching Aaron on this idea that he had for a film, but they were really just hanging out. It was like talking about, what do you want to do? Where do you see your future going? They were having like this kind of deep conversation. And Aaron really liked him and responded to him and believed in him and thought that he would be able to pull off a feature. Brought it back to me and our other sort of producing partner, Cameron, that got on board. And yeah, we developed the script, the project with Chris. This was like in 2020, I feel like. I don't even know. Yeah, we shot in 2021. So yeah, this was probably 2019, 2020. And we worked for like a year on the script and just like getting everything into place creatively. We tried to raise money. We went out and tried to raise a little bit of money through private equity. Originally, we were going to make it for like $300,000. It was his first feature. It was like, let's just make it really low in Ohio. He wrote it, like we talk about writing with constraints. He actually, if and when you see it, there's a whole like Shelby Oaks theme park. Shelby Oaks is a place, and there's a Shelby Oaks theme park, which was this old roller coaster and like Ferris wheel that he knew about that exists that had been kind of run down. And he always wanted to like, it's just the production value of that is amazing. So he wrote scenes that took place in this location. He also wrote scenes. The Shawshank Redemption prison is in Ohio, and he was friendly with the people who run it. So he wrote scenes that could be taken, that would take place there at that prison. So like everything he wrote, we shot it in Ohio near his hometown, and it was like all places and locations that he knew he had access to. So that's kind of what he wrote. And we tried to raise a little bit of equity. It wasn't really coming together. COVID hit, whatever. And then at some point it was like, why not try to do like a Kickstarter? So we actually funded Shelby Oaks as a Kickstarter, which is, you know, I don't know, everyone probably has a different experience with Kickstarter. This was definitely someone who has like millions of followers. It's not probably an experience that most of us can replicate. But we raised like $1.4 million on Kickstarter through like a professionally run kind of really strategic Kickstarter. So we financed the movie with that Kickstarter money plus some equity. We ended up raising some loans and stuff to kind of do a supplement. And then yeah, we made the movie. By the way, we didn't get all that money because Kickstarter takes a fee. We paid a company to run the campaign. Like the movie itself was lower than that for our production budget. But yeah, we went out and made the movie, and then we basically, you know, we went through post for a while. It was kind of like a long post, and eventually Neon saw the movie and decided to make an offer. And we sold to them like probably over a year ago. But it takes like a long time to do this sort of like wide release that they're doing. So yeah, and I mean, that's the dream. Like Neon is an amazing partner. I've made a lot of movies, but I've never had a wide theatrical release like this. Usually the movies I make are playing in like less than 30 cities, you know, in the US if they're doing a theatrical. So this is definitely like a new territory for me to have this kind of like broad, you know, rollout. And definitely, like Jen said earlier, like it's definitely the dream. You make this little movie in Ohio where we just like all really just did the movie together. No one was trying to get rich on it. We were just like, let's make this the best we possibly can. And then Neon really liked what we had done. So
And Emily, you're in it. And
Emily's in it. Yeah. And Emily, you knew Chris, right? That's how, right?
Yeah,
I can't even remember how yeah.
Honestly, it's the weirdest thing. COVID hit, and my boyfriend, now husband, watched Chris on YouTube, watched his reviews, and like he's very cool. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then like the next day I got a DM from Chris Tuckman, and I was like, am I being pranked? Like, this is so weird. But apparently he had heard about my screenwriting through, I'm not even sure, through Aaron or somebody, but he reached out to me and he was like, I've heard you're a good screenwriter. I'd love to pay you to do coverage on my script. And so I was like, as soon as I like found out like it is Chris Tuckman, this is so bizarre. I just watched his YouTube. I was like, yeah, sure. It's COVID. Like, I need some money for sure. Like, send me the script. I wasn't expecting much, but I got it and I was like, oh, okay. This is really interesting, actually. And so I read it again. I wrote extensive coverage. We talked. And I remember some notes I gave to him, but it wasn't extensive. And I was like, I think you should pay this off a little bit more. But this is great, man. Good job. And he was like, well, I'd love for you to read more. And we just kind of developed a friendship like that. I have like sorry, if my face is turning a different color, it's because I have like night vision coming on my screen right now. So if I'm turning orange, I apologize.
Emily, I just want to say real quick, we have to wrap up in a sec
Oh, I'm so
to do
sorry.
Q&A, but is there anything you want to say about how you acted in it? How
Yeah, I'm so sorry. So after all of that, he partnered with Paper Street, blah, blah, blah. One of the characters that I play is a filmmaker. And so initially that character was a guy and he was like, you have to be in the film. So he changed the gender of that filmmaker. I'm not in the film a ton. We shot some that didn't make it into the film, but I was on set for about 3 weeks driving around with Ashleigh in the middle of Ohio. And it was a blast. Chris is wonderful, and I'm so excited for the success of this.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it over to Nicole and we're gonna do a Q&A now.
Hey everyone, thank you so much. This conversation was really awesome to hear. I know a lot of our audience members already have questions they're posting in the chat. So I'll go back to those in a moment, but I also wanted to ask the audience to please, if you have a question, raise your hand, the digital hand, and I'll call on you. Once I call on you, please unmute yourself and you can direct it to one person or the whole panel. And when you're done, please mute yourself again. And you can also continue to put your questions in the chat if you'd like to proceed that way as well. And I see a question from Nancy Green. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Nancy.
Hi. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question was specifically about I think Alone with You. I was really curious about what the budget was and also if you were able to get like an upfront minimum guarantee instead of like, sharing of revenue or things like that. And yeah, thank you.
Sure. I know my producers wouldn't love me like sharing like the full budget, but I can say we made it for less than $100,000, which in the indie world is nothing to make for a feature film. So all of that went to gear, went to the virtual cast members we had one on set. But yeah, it was sub 100,000 and we did get an MG. We signed with Raven Banner for international and Dark Star for domestic. We did get an MG at the time. I think it was conservative, but the film has made money, which is wonderful, especially in the indie realm. So going back to Ashleigh's point, make your film for as little as you need to. And then hopefully the return on investment comes back to you quicker. So that was the story there.
Awesome.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, Nicole Demensis, may I please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's so cool to hear from all of you. I have a two-parter. I'm a big fan of some of the work that's come out of the Frontiers Pitch Fest. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about that, your personal experience, because you have to qualify, right? It's not just everyone can pitch. So I'd love to hear about that. And then for Ashleigh specifically, I have family in Alaska. I'd love to see more films being made out there. I wanted to hear a little bit more about your idea, either for getting more traffic or more filmmakers there, if that's involving tax credits. So that's the question.
My film was in the pitch market, so I'll just quickly say, yeah, they accept only a couple from the US specifically every year, and then also they accept films from other countries. So you do have to apply and you do have to be selected to pitch officially. But even if you are not selected, I would still recommend going because the experience of watching all the pitches, which I did for the first year I just went to watch. And it was such a transformative educational experience. You watch pitches all day long and you just like learn how to be better at pitching from that. And then all weekend, if even if you're not like pitching yourself, you're meeting people constantly. It's like you're meeting a bunch of people who either make horror movies or invest in horror movies or distributors of horror, sales agents. Like everybody is focused on horror and everybody loves it. And you know, you're meeting them in more professional settings, like but then also you're drinking with them at night, so you're doing your like professional meeting during the day and then you're hang out at the mixer at night. So it's a really good way to like meet but also solidify those relationships. And Ashleigh, I'll pass it on to you for Alaska.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say there's not Fantasia has a great pitch market, but there are pitch competitions at different festivals, not just like Fantastic Fest just started one this year where the winner got $100,000 to put towards their movie. So that was like a big deal. And there's other, you know, I think there's lots of other, you know, several other festivals that do pitches or have opportunities to pitch to different people. So just if you do some research into that, like it's just a great, like Jen saying, like it's a great place to even just watch and learn what you're responding to and be like, oh, that I liked the way they pitch or I don't like the way they pitch, and just kind of hearing it. And then for Alaska, yeah, I'm working on I live in Alaska right now. I don't really make a lot of movies here. I travel around to wherever the tax credits are, like Canada, Illinois, New York, Oklahoma, Louisiana. I'm always making movies in different states, but I did just do a movie up here, the Joe Swanberg movie with Dakota and Jake. I am working with legislatures right now on getting a tax credit. We've been doing it for a couple sessions, like warming everyone up to the idea. Last session, we had a bill that made it through its first committee. It will resume going through the process in February. It'll go through another committee. If it passes there, it will hit the floor and be voted on. So it's hopefully by next year sometime, we will get a state law that says that we have a tax credit in Alaska. And I do not think it's going to make us like the next Georgia or anything like that. In fact, I've assured the representatives that Hollywood is not coming to take over Alaska. But I think it will mean that films that want to have this look and feel of like mountains and glaciers and whatever, they don't have to go to Iceland or Canada, which is the two places that they have to go right now, neither of which is in the United States. Maybe Montana has that, probably is the only competitor in the US. And so I've sort of said, like, look, you're not going to get tons of movies, but at least we'll be on the table for the projects that might want to shoot up here. And there's a whole other, you know, there's not a lot of infrastructure, so it's definitely not going to take over, but it would just be nice to have a different economy up here for young people and creatives. And I'm not going to be involved in like the film office or running it. This is my like contribution and then I'm out. No, just kidding. But it's a lot of work. I'm accidentally like a lobbyist or whatever. So.
Oh, very, very cool. My sister has a house. She has 2 twins. I'm like,
nice.
Actors. So, okay.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. We cast actually the Joe movie that we did up here. We brought in the few like sort of name actors, but then we cast locally. We did like 3 different casting sessions and we brought in a ton. We actually had 1,000 people respond to our extras casting. And we had so many background actors that were just delighted to be in the movie. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hannah Holloway, would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Yes, hi, it's actually Hannah.
Sorry.
It's all good. I'm pretty new in horror filmmaking. I just made a horror short that just won an award with IndieX and it just premiered at Santa Cruz Film Fest. And I have 2 baby questions and then I guess a bigger question. I guess I'm just wondering, like for someone starting out, do you recommend film festivals or film residencies? And my baby question was, I wanted to know if any of you had mentors before while you were getting started and who you would recommend, or if you know anybody who's like taking on people. And then what do you think is an ideal runtime for a short film? Thank you.
Who wants to go first?
I'm trying to remember every question. So I think residencies and film festivals. Is that the first part of the question? Are those helpful? I've never done a residency film festivals, I find really helpful just kind of watching what's out there and finding what I align with, much like Jen was saying, watching pitches and being like, that's my kind of film, that's my kind of film. So yeah, I don't have experience with residencies. Mentors, I've had various people in my life, but they're very kind of specific to me. Saw me kind of coming up. A lot of people from theater who helped my transition into film. I would say rather than look for like a mentor who's like focusing on like mentoring a ton of people, look in your life who believes in you and who might have some expertise. I really befriended a friend of mine, a cinematographer in Chicago initially when I started out, and he would shoot anything for me. And he was so patient and he forced me to storyboard everything and shot list everything. And he would not let me rest. And he's like, I come from the acting world, so I'm super hard on myself on prep. So I found somebody who was going to push me lovingly. So I would say look to those people in your own life. And then what was the last question?
I guess an ideal runtime for a horror short, in your opinion.
As long as it needs to be. I think the quicker the better. You're more likely to get programmed, I think, just because programmers have like full run times of blocks that they have to fill, and they could do 2 shorter films for like the length of one, which they're probably more likely to do just to give more filmmakers like the platform. I would say just make it as concise and short as it needs to be. Cut all the fat, and then you're probably at the right runtime.
I'll also just add to the mentor question. I kind of think the mentor question and the film festival question and residency question are kind of all of one and connected, because like when you're going to film festivals, you're meeting filmmakers. I assume the same is for film residencies, although I've never done one. But the point is like being part of the community and finding people whose work you admire, and those relationships kind of come naturally, and some of those people might become a mentor. I've had like so many mentors over the years, including somebody who I ended up working for like 8 years, and he is really he was one of the producers on The Ranger. He would really like supported uh me in terms of like helping me with the confidence that like I could make movies. Um but that just came from, I was like a fan of his work, and I like went to his Christmas party and asked if I could work for him. So it's really just about getting out there and meeting people and creating these relationships. And, once in a while, one of those relationships might turn into a mentor.
I also think if you can make your short, I think your short should be whatever it needs to be to tell a good story. If you're asking what will help it get it programmed, it'll be under 10 minutes. Like if you want to know, like, this is the whatever, it's going to have a more likely chance. Like Emily was saying, a shorter thing under 10, I think they look at differently than over. Like a 25-minute short is hard to get programmed, but it can if it's,
Would you say that's the same for a proof of concept as well?
A proof of concept, I think it depends what you're doing with it. If it's like a tone reel or a teaser, it's probably just a couple, like, pretty short. If you've actually shooting part of your movie, I mean, I watched a 25-minute proof of concept for The Artifice Girl because he basically shot the first like third of his movie, and then I jumped on board to produce that. So but I think in general, people have short attention spans, right? So it's much harder to sit down knowing you're committing to like a 30-minute thing than a 3-minute thing, so.
Thank you.
All right. Meg has a question.
Yeah, hi. Thank you all for doing this. I think this question might be a little more on the producerial side. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. I'm interested. I'm trying to make my first feature right now. It is written to take place in New Hampshire, which is where I grew up, and I'm curious about, I have sort of assumed it's not going to be shot there, but I'm curious about the benefits of shooting somewhere where there isn't infrastructure, but then might be cheaper because of that versus shooting somewhere where there is infrastructure and all of the wonderful benefits of of that infrastructure? Because it sounds like at least some of you here have done maybe both.
I shot a movie in New Hampshire 2 years ago because they had access to this like amazing estate that we could have run of. Everything was so inexpensive. The caterers were like delighted to service us because no one ever shoots in that tiny town. Like we just had like run of the place, right? So like huge benefit to doing it that way. But like you said, the downside is like you have to like bring in your equipment, or maybe, you know, like you have to bring stuff in. I don't know. I'm actually, I don't know how the other two will answer this, but I am a fan of, I just spoke to a director recently who was being told he had to take his film that was scripted for Block Island and shoot it in Canada for the tax credit and all this stuff with crew he didn't know and this and that. And I basically said he had like $1 million, you know, he had enough money where I said, I think you should go to Block Island where you scripted this for, where you're saying that your whole family like runs the place and you can bring in all your friends. This is your first feature. They'll work for really hard for you for not a ton of stuff. And you are telling me you'll have like places for them to stay and you'll have access to all these locations. Like, I think that really can help the film a lot. So I encouraged him to do that. And every situation is different, but I do see a lot of value in like going to somewhere if you are familiar with it and can access, like Alaska, where I brought this film crew up, you know, like there's no infrastructure here, but we got so much value for locations and stuff because no one shoots here. So it's always a trade-off depending on your budget too. If you have a large budget, you will need the tax credit and you really can't justify leaving like 30% of $10 million on the table. But if you're working with something smaller, I think there can be a lot of value in going places that you know are places that you can get a lot for your money. How, Emily and Jen, I'm curious what you guys would say about that.
I agree with you in terms of producing. In terms of directing, like I love going to like a foreign country where I don't know anybody and just like meeting all new department heads and throwing myself into that world. So I'm a little split.
I mean, I would say I think, Ashleigh, what you brought up, I think it depends on the budget. If it's low enough, go where you feel comfortable, right? Like go where you know people will really support you. At a little higher point, just depending and having some like a line producer really advise you on this. I'm like Jen. I like going to like I love building new teams. I love finding new people. As an actor, I get to work with a lot of crew. I poach them. I'm just like, well, that gaffer is pretty good. Like, so I kind of collect people, but I do love kind of going on an adventure. I love, you know, I'm looking to shoot my next film up in Canada, so I'm kind of learning that with my Canadian producer and navigating that, one of my next films. And then Ashleigh, you and I are working on another film that's in Washington State. So the tax incentive out there is really incredible too. So that's at a certain budget that it makes sense to really look at the tax credit. If it's low enough, go where you feel good, and make the movie. Like, let that not be your concern. Your concern should be the film.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. We have some questions in the chat I can run through real quick. Sarah Bimji asked, can you talk more about the Shutter sale? I think that might have been, was that for Emily? How did you get their attention, and did you have a sales agent / connection?
Sure. Well, I feel like Jen, you could also speak to this too. I feel like you sold to them first.
I mean, with the Ranger, we sold out of South by. And we had a sales agent. Our producer was our sales agent. One of our producing partners acted as our sales agent. And then my second feature, The Sacrifice Game, because I developed that relationship with them, Shutter came on ahead of us shooting and became our distributor ahead of time, which was really awesome to, you know we were making the film and didn't have to worry about distribution. Emily, what was your experience?
My experience, I actually found oddly, I found our distro, international and domestic, on my own, not meaning to. I just kind of stumbled upon the best offers. My producers totally negotiated that, but I think Darkstar negotiated the Shutter deal, and then that happened simultaneously with Raven Banner internationally as well. So, yeah, distro.
And Ashleigh, you have like several movies on Shudder too, right?
Yep. And I have done it all ways. I've worked with sales agents, and then I've also sold directly for various films. So sales agents are super valuable, in having relationships. And then sometimes if you have those relationships, you can also go direct. So it sort of just depends. But Shutter's awesome. Everyone should work with Shutter.
Awesome. Dustin Sklavlos, sorry, pardon my pronunciation. He asked, can you elaborate a little bit more on the budget, specifically in doing a union production, SAG, IATSE, etc., versus a non-union production like Evil Dead was?
I always am doing SAG movies. I've never made a feature that's not SAG. At any budget level, you can probably access SAG talent. I think it's worth it to go SAG, even if you're the lowest, like ultra low budget. IATSE, DGA, IATSE, WGA, that's all really like film dependent. And it depends where you're shooting in what state. If you're over like, I mean, I don't know what the rule, I'm going on record, but if you're over like if you're over like $1 million, you're going to have to start considering IATSE for sure. In some states lower than that, in some states higher than that. But there is this thing called tier 0, depending what budget you're at. I think if you're under 275, you can be tier 0, which allows you to set the rates that you want, but you still do have to pay the fringes and pay the P&H and do that kind of thing.
Cool. And Dustin has another question. I think this is also for you, Ashleigh, because you were talking about working with first-time filmmakers. He said, when you work with a first-time filmmaker, do you usually try to pair them with an experienced cinematographer, i.e. Clive Barker and Robin Vigeon on Hellraiser?
I like
Yes,
all the old school horror movie references.
Yeah, I definitely think like a first-time filmmaker should surround themselves with really great department heads, the cinematographer, their production designer, their producers. Like if you're starting, if you want to have as many, I want to like, what's the thing where they're like, don't be the smartest person in the room, right? Like surround yourself with people that know what they're doing more than you do, right? That's like a key to success. Like work with the best people that you can. So yeah, I would definitely want to pair someone with also an AD is really important for a first-time feature filmmaker. Like a nice AD that's going to kind of work with them and help them is important. So yeah, I think just surrounding them with a really great team.
Thank you.
Regina Benali asked, did Neon pay enough to cover the budget plus profit?
Neon is an amazing partner, and yes, we loved our deal that we did with them.
Excellent. Let's see. Sarah Bemji asked, would you recommend the Kickstarter company you worked with if you don't have a big following like Chris?
I don't think, I think they primarily work with like influencers and stuff on not just Kickstarter, but other things. I think to do the model that we did with Chris, it would be really challenging without like a sort of following in place. I don't know that can't say that I'd recommend like paying someone to try to do that with you if you don't have like a large following. I think you really, what they were doing was activating his following in a really strategic way. I think it would be hard to build that. Never say never, people do it, right? But I would caution against like paying someone to do that for you if you don't already have a built-in following.
Sounds good. Christiana Carmine asked, And is there a world in which a short horror script can be attractive to producers, financiers, and or investors, knowing the ROI isn't going to be that of a feature or any ROI period?
You can definitely get investors for your shorts. People invest in short films. They're not doing it for an ROI. You know, if you're looking for financing for your short, you are getting people who believe in supporting art and supporting you and supporting what you're doing and supporting film, or for many different reasons they might get involved. There's not really like there's not really a return on shorts. There are companies like Fracture to Atlas and other companies that allow you to do like a 501c3 status underneath their umbrella organization that will allow people to donate to your short film and do it as like a tax write-off. So that can be really beneficial in raising money for a short, where someone can, someone has extra money can like write it off on their taxes. Can be a motivating factor for them. Emily, you've done a lot of shorts recently, like financing them. You find people that are interested in supporting, right?
Yeah, most of my short films I self-financed, like maxing out a credit card at one point, which I don't necessarily recommend. I was able to pay it off, but but that film got me into Sitges. So I decided that was a worthwhile thing to do. More recently, I haven't had to raise the financing. The last short that I directed, it's my first like one take horror film. Very short. It's playing right now, called Affirmation. It's about like wellness culture and like the dark side of that. But that was financed. The producer put money in because she was playing the lead, and she brought this script to me, and I was like, I know what to do with this. Great. The film before that, I partnered with a production company that wanted to expand their filmography, their most recent like body of work. And so they wanted high quality shorts to show on their website. They're kind of new. So I was given a budget in order to execute a vision that they really liked. So if you can find a production company that's actually looking to build a reel of work that they can show other people, or if you have a short that you're like, this is a proof of concept that could lead to a feature. I think it's just finding the value for the partners in short filmmaking, because again, there isn't a lot of ROI. There are sites like Alter that do give a little bit of money, but it's not going to recoup that. So I think it's just finding partnerships that feel mutually beneficial.
Great. Neil, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to ask, other than film festival pitch fests, do you look for scripts by other screenwriters from other places? Like, do managers send you scripts? Do you look at the blacklist or script competitions for screenwriters or scripts?
Yeah, all of the above for me. Yeah.
Yeah, the blacklist, the list will come out every year. Sometimes a friend will be like, oh, you have to read this one, and I'll dive in. Sometimes it's a work colleague, a friend of a friend, just being like, this is really good. I could see you directing this. Yeah, it's kind of, you never quite know where it's going to come from, but the sticky ones, the ones that you obsess about and you read and you're just like, you can't, like, you think about it in the shower, you think about it like when you're doing dishes. Yeah, you just have to comb through a lot of stuff, and then you find the ones that speak to you.
Well, I hate to cut these short. We had only a couple more questions, but we are at 7:30, so I apologize. I was so invested in hearing all these answers. I let us go over. So it's now time to wind things down. Great questions, audience, and thank you so much to the panel for your honest, straightforward, and encouraging answers. We really appreciate your time and expertise tonight. And now I want to welcome Diane back. Diane, are you there? She's had some internet issues. So we're hoping that she's back and able to say goodbye.
Yes, a few internet issues. Thanks, Nicole. And thanks for orchestrating this great Q&A. A big thank you to you, Jenn, Ashleigh, and Emily. Am I freezing on screen? Am I freezing?
A little
No,
bit.
you're good.
We can hear you.
For your thoughtful, full answers to the questions that came your way. It was so informative about the business and helpful for all level of filmmaker that we have in the audience here, some who are working in horror and not. So, so helpful. Hearing about your individual journeys and how you support each other, really empowering. Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area is all about community. And you've built a strong community between yourselves that serves you creatively as individuals, serves you as a team when you work together, and the larger horror community. Just terrific, good work that you're doing. Just very exciting. And unfortunately, we have to stop things here. So please keep us informed about your projects. You let us know what you're doing. We want to know how these things continue. And we'll share it with the rest of our community if you let us know. And so on behalf of all of us here at Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area and all the attendees here who asked such questions, they were honed in on everything you said. We want to thank you for a very special evening and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
And now a huge thank you. You're very welcome.
I think we're
Thank
having.
you to all of you WISPA. We have.
Oh,
Am
So Jenn,
you're losing me.
breaking up. Let's just go over to Nicole.
sure.
Yep.
I'll pick that up. And now a huge thank you to all of our WISPA members and guests out there for participating tonight. To show our appreciation, new or renewing individual members are eligible for a $15 discount on a one-year membership just for attending tonight. The horror code is in the chat, horror 15. If you're a member and your membership is not up yet, no worries. Other codes will be given out at future meetings. This code is good for 1 month and expires on November 30th. So we hope you'll take advantage of this, and we'd love to have you become or continue to be part of our WIFSPA community. Once again, we want to give a big shout out to our community partners for sharing news of this event and with their communities and for all they do to support our organization. Promoting each other as a team works. And now I will update you on a couple of upcoming events. We've got a lot going on. If you're a WIFSPA member and want to gather with other members in a virtual networking space, our next monthly networking event is on November 10th. You can register at the WIFSPA.org link in the chat, which I will drop in now. Sorry for the delay. There we go. Or if you're interested in connecting with members in your area, we now have monthly local meetups happening in San Francisco and Oakland. For more information, go to our website, open the programs tab. Same link in the chat. And then also we will host our next monthly script incubator event on Zoom on November 17th. If you'd like to get your script read or act in the table read, please contact Carol Hall at the email address in the chat, which is right here. Don't forget that we have an amazing merchandise store filled with items you might like for yourself or could buy for holiday gifts this year. If you've not already done so, check it out. You can access the store via our webpage at WISPA or the direct link in the chat. And now Julie Rubio will tell you about our December Zoom event.
Thanks, Nicole. Independent filmmaking has never been more exciting or more challenging. As distribution models evolve, a new wave of filmmakers is taking control, embracing direct-to-consumer, or also known as self-distribution, to reach audiences, protect creative rights, and sustain their careers. Join us on December 2nd for a candid panel discussion with 4 accomplished creative redefining independent film distributors that are also amazing filmmakers. Jeremy Workman, who made The Secret Mall Apartment, Lisa Horowitz made The Automat, Heather Spohr made Almost Famous, and Julie Rubio, myself, made The True Story of Tamara de Lempicka and The Art of Survival. If making a film is hard, you know, distribution can be even harder. So please join us and learn how these filmmakers are charting new paths. And as we close for tonight, we hope you will follow us on social media. So look for our Women in Film San Francisco Bay Area, and you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and that horrible one. I won't even say its name. If you want to save the chat, please do so before we end, because we're getting ready to end here. So go ahead down to the chat screen and save chat. And we also encourage you to join us at WIF Chat, which is our listserv. So if you're ever looking for a job or you want to post something or you have a question, we have over 3,000 members that have been there for over 20 years. And it's pretty amazing because you just go ahead and you post up there and you have an entire community of people that will help you out. So again, that link will also be in the chat. And that's it for tonight. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Diane and Nicole for spearheading tonight's event. And really, lastly, to our terrific panel for their incredible insights. And this evening was just really inspirational. And you're all so inspirational. You know, when I started out in this business over 30 years ago, I was one of the only women in the room. And tonight there were so many women in this room that are badass. And you guys just are completely inspiring. So I mean that from my heart. And really want to say thank you to our tech person, Olivia, for always showing up and always taking care of all of our tech. So keeping us on track. Thank you. And thank you to our board members. None of this would ever happen without all of you. And you all are doing this. You're all volunteering. So thank you so much. And drive safe, everybody. Good night. I know you're not driving. It's my humor. Good night. Great job, Nicole. Great job, Diane.
Woo! We made it. Great job, Jen and team. Are you guys still there? I see
Yeah,
Jen's-
I'm here. Thank you guys so much for having us. It was really fun.
That was awesome. Thank you so
Inspiring. Thank you so much.
Great.